And
that's where we get a lot of our ideas.
And who provides that service?
AAAS, the American Association for the Advancement of Science.
And you can subscribe to that as anybody can subscribe to that?
Mm-hmm. Credentialed journalists, bloggers, freelancers, and you'll be able to get access to reports before they actually come out. Eureka
alert. We'll post the link on the blog later.
So we got this from Science through Eureka Alert, which I think did really well for us because it relates to humans. People want to know how climate change is going to affect them personally.
Okay, let's move on to some further examples from Gerald. Climate change has been on the cover of Der Spiegel quite a few times. Just some examples here from 1986 already and 2007. Gerald, tell us about these stories. How was this decision made to put climate on the cover of Der Spiegel?
Yeah. Well, I just picked out two which are quite distinct from each other. And this is probably the point I want to make. The first one, well, probably you all know this building. It's in Cologne. If you add, I think, 20 meters of sea level, then it looks, then the dome looks like this. These were the early days where we used the word Katastrophe, which is catastrophe, to cover this issue. There was a kind of evolution in the way we write about climate change. With a second cover, I should probably translate it. It's this woman cries, help, the earth is melting, which you can see in the back, which is kind of irony. It is not melting. It's about a kind of statement against hysteria in this topic. So what we really want to present is scientific evidence, and we also want to present climate change not as a short-term problem or a short-term process, but a really long-term process. So probably you can go into this story that I wrote.
Let me first ask you about the word catastrophe. It was in 1986 on the front page, and 10 years later it was hysteria.
Yeah.
Catastrophe is warning against something bad that's going to happen. Hysteria is saying, well, it's basically all exaggerated. Has there been a change in thinking about climate change in the newsroom at Der Spiegel?
Well, it's also a generation change within. We had also cover stories about the German forest that will be completely gone by 2009 or 2005 already. So in this time there were quite a lot of stories that were written in this sound, in this really strong, alarming sound. And I think the experience from the forest issue was that it's dangerous to write about projections, saying, okay, in 10 years, in 15 years, there won't be any forests. And the same thing is with climate change. If you say, okay, in 10 years we are doomed, which won't be the case. And I think this is also some message I want to spread here in. Probably let's go first to the article. What we try to do is in the article to show that CO2 was a major drive in climate throughout Earth history. And you can see this with this graph there. Well, this is only the end. Well, it starts, I think already
9,000 years before Christ.
But it started a billion years ago. So, and you can nicely see what CO2 was doing with climate. And you can also see at the end the influence of humans. They start to, the Industrial Revolution and then this peak. So this is what I mean to explain readers in a thorough way what the problem is. And not to use these very strong keywords. This is, well, I don't know, probably some of you are skeptics, some of you are probably on the other side of the spectrum. Interesting was that we were bashed by both the skeptics and some of the really fundamental environmentalists. So obviously the article was quite good.
Good sign.
Yeah.
Always a good sign.
Yeah.
So you're saying make an effort to find the balance on
Right.
and place the story into the
Right.
right perspective.
Yeah.
And of course, this is the macro story, the ultimate
Yeah.
story about climate change.
Yeah.
But are there also anecdotal or little
Well,
elements that the Spiegel covers
Yeah,
in this
we
dossier?
also try to cover these intriguing things like the greening Sahara. Or I once made the effort to try to, I traveled to Bangladesh, because Bangladesh is always this icon, you know, because we are driving cars, people in Bangladesh are drowning. And the situation there was a little bit more complex, let's put it in this way, because there are islands constantly growing in this delta, and so it's not that, you know, when the sea level rises, all the islands will be washed away, but it's a growing thing, and it's also about how people there manage this change in the way. How can they build dams? I traveled with Dutch engineers, and they try to do the same that the Dutch did in their country, and just to show people how they can build dams to let the land raise up. So I want to show a more balanced view of the whole issue. And also, well, another thing, another icon is the polar bear, which you have all seen these pictures of this poor polar bear jumping from one small iceberg to the other. And if you stick to the scientific evidence, at the moment there is no sign that the population is decreasing. It is decreasing in some parts. It's increasing in other parts. And the biggest problem for the polar bear is the pollution at the moment, this hormone-like pollutants that they accumulate because they are at the end of the food chain. This is really what kills the polar bear at the moment. And listing the polar bear as an endangered species is based on projections of sea ice change, which is quite unusual to list an animal as endangered just on projections. And I think this is something that probably all of you should keep in mind, that there are always interests and environmental organizations. They raise awareness, and this is good, but they have an agenda, and they use these pictures. And I think as a journalist, you should never stop being critical and ask.
So what do you use as your sources? You say, okay, what is this story based on? You go to Bangladesh, but you go with the engineers who want to build the dams over there. Obviously, they have a commercial interest as well. And at the same time, you're also talking about the polar bears. What studies how do you find the studies?
Well, with the polar bear, it's quite simple. You just have to ask a polar bear scientist, and they can give you another picture of the picture that you get when you ring at Greenpeace or WWF. Well, I basically use the same sources as you mentioned already. There is Rick Alert. There is the European pendant. I think it's called Alpha Galileo. We can also post it later.
Yes, we'll do that afterwards.
There is a news feeder also for the German research. So